Behind Morris Auto Salvage, where rust meets forgotten dreams, lives a man the city no longer sees. Tom Walker's hand, scarred, steady, stubborn, carried a memory of better days. His tent is hidden between towers of abandoned steel, a patch of canvas in a graveyard of engines. Tonight, those hands will change two lives, though he doesn't know it yet. As the sun slips behind a yard and security lights blink awake, an engine coughs on the road, a sound out of place at this hour, and fate rolls in on four wheels. Dawn is usually Tom's favorite hour. Frost crunches under his boots as he moves toward a squat propane heater that doubles as kitchen and companionship. His socket set sits beside it, lined as precisely as instruments on an operating tray. Every piece is clean, the chrome worn to a matte gray that matches the sky. He sold everything else long ago. These tools remained. He reaches into his jacket for a photograph he takes out every morning. Emily with her head tipped back in sunlight, laughing. Jenny on her shoulders, mouth open mid-shout at Disney World. Time has washed the colors from the paper, but the joy still glows in their faces. He returns a picture to his pocket as Morris, the salvage yard's owner, raises a hand from the office window. 3 years ago, Morris found Tom asleep in an abandoned Chevy and said, "Just until you're back on your feet." The words grew roots. Before the world narrowed to a tarp, a heater, and odd jobs, Tom had a shop, European cars, exacting clients, a small empire of precision. He remembers a ribbon snipped cleanly, Emily's proud grin, Jenny's promise to learn the difference between a torque wrench and a breaker bar. The paper called him a master mechanic. Then Emily's diagnosis arrived early one winter morning, and everything that seemed solid turned to sand. They emptied bank accounts and retirement accounts. He sold the shop, the house, the Mercedes he used to test customer parts. Treatments multiplied as hope thinned. None of it mattered. When the house went, he told Jenny to go to California anyway, to chase the future she dreamed. Grief poured him a drink and kept pouring. The shame that followed finished the work grief began. Transmissions, Morris calls, opening the door. New arrivals, third row. Tom nods, the motion easy as breathing. In the yard, engines speak a language he still understands. Once, wealthy strangers waited on his diagnosis. Now he sells hours and strength by the piece. The machines do not care. Aluminum still shears at the same point. Vacuum leaks still hiss in the same skittering whisper. Timing is still everything. A text lights his old flip phone. "Jenny, love you, Dad. Hope you're doing better." He stares until the screen sleeps, the unset reply heavy in his throat. "I'm sorry I let you down." He works until the sun rubs thin and shadows ladder the stacks of cars. He takes his usual loop. The row of beetles like bright candy past its date, the crane with its long patient neck above compactor. The secret path through muscle cars to his tent. He is coiling an extension cord when the sound reaches him. An engine with the heartbeat of an American classic. Out of time by half a breath. He steps out from between two stacks as a 1967 Mustang fastback crawls through the gate, its burgundy paint catching the last orange of day. Even from here, he can tell the car has been altered, not for speed or flash, but for access. Doors that open wider, a reinforced frame, running boards that blend with the lines like they were always meant to be there. The engine stutters, a belt dragging its feet. The car dies by the chain-link fence. The driver's door opens and a mechanical arm lowers a carbon fiber wheelchair to the gravel. The girl who settles into it moves with the assurance of someone who has navigated rooms and roads not built for her. Tom watches where her hands brace, the way she approaches the Mustang, as if it's a partner that had a moment of doubt. He steps in the shadows slowly so as not to startle her. "Timing belt," he says softly, giving the car's eyes rather than hers. Or a tensioner that wants to be a comedian. She swipes her cheeks quickly with a sleeve, pride flaring. "You know Mustangs?" "Worked on a few." He keeps distance until she nods. "Mind if I look?" "Be careful with the hood release," she says. It sticks. Under the lamp's yellow circle, the engine bay unfurls like a story told by a careful hand. Whoever designed the modifications respected the car's soul. It's clean work. The belt is done as he thought, and there's a vacuum line ready to turn brittle into dust. "Not just a belt," he says, pointing. "Heat shield rubbed this here. Small, but it chews through over time. Wheel adjust. Lines need reseating. Whoever built this did good work. Machines still need forgiveness. He glances at her. I can fix it. How much? The question is automatic. A bar between her and embarrassment. No charge, he answers. If you're okay with that. It's late. But the inventory is decent and I've got hands. He smiles a little. I'd appreciate the company. A car idles beyond the fence. Lights off. Inside sits a woman with eyes that have measured market to men and found both wanting. Catherine Matthews watches the way the stranger keeps the girl's dignity intact. The ease with which he folds her into the process. Not as passenger, but as collaborator. She opens a laptop and, in minutes, knows who Tom was before the world came apart. The patents, the column of praise, the blank years. Tom lays his socket set open on a magnetic tray, where the girl can reach. 10 millimeter? He asks. She maneuvers, grips, passes. The simple transfer is a ceremony. My dad used to let me help, she says, studying the belt's teeth until the helping didn't fit his story anymore. His loss, Tom replies without heat, as if stating torque specs. What's your name? Sarah. Tom. He works as he talks, removes covers, relieves tension, swaps the belt, checks pulleys, reroutes lines away from the rub point. He explains as he goes, and Sarah asks the kind of questions people ask when they intend to remember the answers. He shows her the wear pattern and the place where a line slowly abraded. Tiny problems, he says, become big ones if you ignore them. Cars. People. She nods, gaze steady. Mom says in adaptive design you think 3 moves ahead. Because a single constraint becomes a cascade if you pretend it isn't there. He pauses, surprised into a smile. Your mom is right a lot of the time? Most of the time. Sarah says, the corner of her mouth tipping up. Catherine in the car, hearing the exchange, lowers a laptop and just watches. Expertise is one thing. Care is rarer. By midnight, the work is done. Tom closes the hood with a gentle hand and steps back. Moment of truth, he says. Want to do the honors? Sarah transfers with practice efficiency. The mechanical arm lifts, the seat welcomes her. Her hands find the adaptive controls without searching. The engine turns once and settles into a contented hum that makes Tom's chest loosen. Sarah laughs, the sound spilling white into the cold air. It's better than before, she says. How? Lines, timing, listening, he says, as if those 3 words explain everything. Because it is world they do. She reaches for her bag. Please let me pay you. Promise you'll bring it back if it sounds wrong, he says, already packing. That's enough. Catherine steps into the light at last. Mr. Walker, she says, extending a hand. I believe we should talk. In the thin morning hours, after they have tested the car again and again, after Sarah's fallen asleep in her chair wrapped in a blanket from his tent and the engine ticks as it cools, Catherine learns what she needed to know. He never once treated her daughter as fragile. He treated her as an engineer. At dawn, when Frost draws lace on the Mustang's hood, she makes her offer. The next day, a jet waits at the strip, its skin polished like a promise. Morris hands Tom a package. Clean clothes that fit as if they were measured when he wasn't looking. Don't argue. Morris says, gruff turning gentle at the edges. Took you long enough. On the jet, Catherine outlines a program she's building at Matthews Innovative Technologies. Classic car adaptations that honor heritage and deliver independence. Systems that look stock and behave like miracles. A division with the funding to do it right. She spins a 3D model of a 57 Bel Air in the air. Points the placement of disguise controls to redundancies that make pilots nod. We have brilliant engineers, she says. We need someone who knows how these machines breathe. Someone who understands the person in the seat. Tom studies the renderings, seeing shortcuts and places to hide the work, so it looks like original art. Hydraulics will give you feel, he says. Electronics will give you precision. But the mounting points need rethinking. You can't ask 1957 steel to take 2025 forces without spreading load. He hears himself, hears the old certainty in his voice, and something in him stretches like a back after a long sleep. He glances through the window as the salvage yard shrinks to a thumbprint below. What if I fail? He asks. Then you tried? Sarah says, turning in her seat, eyes bright, which is more than most people do. At headquarters, the board sits around polished wood. They have read his file. They have read between the lines. They question him as if he were a system under stress. He answers without ornament. He talks about dreams hidden in steel and the dignity of independence. Catherine plays footage from the salvage yard, his patient hands, the lamp, the line he refused to cross between help and pity. The R&D director asks about a 2-decade-old patent of his for electronic brake force distribution on modified classics. He sketches a refinement on the glass wall, tying it to their neural response systems. When he finishes, there's a long quiet in which no one doubts. The vote carries. He works. The lab hums with disciplined obsession. Lisa Chun, project manager, speaks human factors like a first language. The engineers understand load paths and skin reactions, and how to tuck a miracle where a driver's palm expects chrome. Tom learns their software, and they learn why a millimeter matters even when no one can see it. Sarah becomes their test pilot, charting the edge between theory and lived experience. Catherine stops by at odd hours, kicks off her heels, and watches without interfering. When Tom tells her a thing should be made a certain way, she asks why once and then fights to make it so. Their first showpiece is Angela Richardson's Bel Air, a family heirloom the senator wants his daughter to drive at her wedding. In the lab, the car hangs in hologram and then on a lift. Tom insists every control looks period correct. No futuristic panels. No seams where seams don't belong. They design a transfer system that disappears into the door structure. They tune throttle mapping for diurnal strength changes, build redundancies on redundancies. Wait for parts, reject parts, wait again. The first problem slips in quietly, like cold under a door. Supply chain oddities. A line of code that behaves slightly wrong. Tom notices because he is built to notice. Lisa finds file timestamps that don't make sense. Catherine rushes in with news, and an anonymous report hit the board. Claims of cut corners, unsafe systems, compromised data, and one pointed conclusion. A man who lived in a tent cannot be trusted with safety. Tom stands in his office, hands flat on the desk, and feels the old weight press in. He does not look away from it. Pull security footage, he says evenly. I was here when those logs say I wasn't. They find the night in question. Tom alone in the lab, running tests until the clock resets. They dig the diagnostic caches out of machines that never touch the network. The original data shines through the smear. Catherine calls legal. Lisa starts printing. Sarah rolls in with her jaw set and says, "Let me talk." In an emergency meeting, a representative from Bolton Industries smiles with teeth and suggests a pause to protect consumers. Tom plays the late-night footage, and his voice doesn't tremble. There's a difference between broken and abandoned, he says. These systems aren't broken. Someone tried to abandon them on the side of the road and hoped we didn't look closely. The recovered data fills the screens. Angela's video message plays next. Her hands on the wheel in testing. Her face when the car answers her smallest motion. Her voice when she says this is the first time since the accident she felt like her life might keep its shape. Catherine lays out the legal consequences of corporate espionage. The board turns back toward them, and the room breathes again. The program continues. The deadline stands. On the day of the reveal, the showroom fills with cameras, collectors, journalists, and the quiet spaces in a father's heart he thought would stay empty forever. The Bel Air gleams, tropical turquoise, chrome like a river. Tom speaks simply. This is not a trick, he says. It is respect. For a car's history, and for the person who refuses to surrender it. He opens the door. The transfer system moves like choreography. Angela settles behind the wheel and starts the engine. The room forgets itself and claps before she even moves. When she does, the car glides forward on a whisper. The senator's hand lifts to his mouth, as if he needs to hold something in or coax something out. The Classic Car Accessibility Foundation announces a partnership on the spot. Work multiplies. The Matthews Walker Foundation forms in the same breath. Sarah insists on the name, and funds pour toward adaptation, research mentorship. Jenny calls. She has seen the press release. Her voice sounds like the first rain after a long summer. She flies in with a plan to make the program greener. Solar-supported charging for retrofitted assist systems, recyclable composites, a closed loop on materials. Tom meets her in the lobby beneath the company's name and his own and struggles not to say sorry first. She saved him by saying different roads, same destination, and grips him like the years between were a deep breath, not a chasm. The training center takes shape in a place that kept him alive when he was falling, Morris Auto Salvage. The tarps disappear. The concrete gets poured. Lifts rise like ribs under a steel roof. Jenny covers the roof with panels that pull light out of air. They mount Tom's socket set in a case at the entrance, nicked, cleaned, in violet. So the first thing anyone sees is proof that the ordinary can be holy. They hang a sign over the door, where dreams get fixed. Word spreads. Mechanics who've been knocked sideways by life show up with calluses and stubbornness. The Morris Scholarship gives them a runway and a room. Veterans arrive with stories. Teenagers arrive with brilliance. And a girl named Maria designs a steering solution on her lunch break that will change how they mount controls forever. Sarah teaches classes between her own coursework. Angela comes back with wedding photos and stands at a workbench to solder, because no one leaves this place without giving something back. Tom lives at the lab in the yard and at a small apartment Catherine's team furnished in a style he calls uncomplicated. He keeps the photograph of Emily and Jenny on the kitchen counter next to his coffee mug. Bolton tries again, more carefully this time. It doesn't matter. The lab learned to lock doors. The engineers learned to hide traps for thieves. Catherine learned to enjoy unraveling corporate lies. Tom learned to speak on stages. At the Foundation's annual conference, he tells a room full of people with notebooks and cameras that a car could be a promise you made to yourself when you were young and unhurt, and that keeping that promise might be the difference between staying in your life and stepping out of it. He and Catherine stand one evening in the salvage light near his old tent site, now a garden of low steel planters and stubborn flowers. The yard looks impossible. Workstations humming. Students arguing about load calculations. A 1957 Chevy pickup, restored to perfection by Morris idling like a heartbeat. Catherine's fingers thread through his. Never told you why I started the adaptive division, she says. Sarah's father left because he couldn't imagine our life with a chair in it. I decided no one would get to decide our lives for us again. Tom nods. Machines can teach people that they don't have to accept limits, he says. You just have to know where to put the leverage. Catherine laughs, a sound with weight and warmth, and the laugh shifts into quiet. He clears his throat. This garden, he says, would make a good place to start a next chapter. She tilts her head, understanding racing ahead of words. Are you asking me to marry you in a salvage yard? He looks around at the center blossoming out of steel and second chances. In the right salvage yard. They do it under the sign with a handful of grease under his nails and a dress that catches a light. Sarah beaming like a headlight. Jenny crying like weather. Morris pretending there is dust in his eyes. Rings engraved with timing marks gleam when they lift their hands. The pickup serves as a getaway car. The reception smells like coffee, hot metal, and roses. A year passes measured not by calendars but by finished cars and returned independence. The Foundation spreads to other cities. A prince in Dubai asks for 10 cars to be adapted for a museum that refuses to put anything behind velvet rope. A woman in Detroit drives her father's Oldsmobile for the first time since she was injured and says, "Now I remember who I am." A boy in Phoenix builds a switch interface, so intuitive Tom asks if he can name it after the kid. The answer is yes. A streaming service shoots a documentary called From Salvage to Salvation that tries to capture how a belt slipped one night and the world caught. On graduation day, Sarah drives her Mustang to the podium. The engine purrs like the first night Tom touched it, stronger now for all the miles since. She takes her engineering degree with steady hands and a grin that refuses to be contained. In the front row, Tom holds Catherine's hand while their infant daughter, Emily, sleeps on his chest, her breath warm through his shirt. Jenny sits beside him with a tablet full of environmental plans and a ring on her finger from a fellow engineer who understands why she carries a torque wrench in her bag. Angela waves from across the aisle and points outside, with a Bel Air and 10 other adapted classics line the curb like a chorus. When Sarah gives her speech, She points to those cars. Machines can't love you, she says, but they can carry the weight of the life you love. The right hands make that possible. In the back row, Morris shifts, pretending again to fight dust. Tom presses his lips to Emily's hair and closes his eyes. He sees a tent, a heater, a photograph that never changed. A girl in a wheelchair tracing the hood of a Mustang like a promise. A woman in a car watching what hope looks like when it's practical. A belt slipped at the right time. A life pulled back into alignment. The Matthews Walker Foundation's first anniversary fills the yard with a sort of noise that means something. Tools tapping, people laughing, the low talk of problem solving. The Morris Walker Center bustles with students who are not interested in pity and teachers who are not interested in excuses. The plaque where his tent stood reads simply, "Where dreams get fixed." The phrase is printed on a dozen t-shirts and engraved on the core of every system they build. Tom walks a line of cars waiting for their turn. A 65 Porsche 356 for a painter who lost fine motor control and found new ways to express it. A 72 Chevelle for a grandmother who wants to take her grandkid for ice cream herself. A 90s Defender for a climber who figures if he can't scramble up rocks, he can drive people who can. He runs a fingertip along a fender and feels it, not paint, but the hum of history in steel. He still carries the old photograph. He still keeps the socket set spotless. He still wakes at dawn by habit. Even when home is no longer canvas, but a small apartment with sunlight and the sound of a child. On some mornings he walks the rows of the yard before anyone else arrives, and thanks the cars for teaching him what he needed to remember. Broken is not the same as finished. Interruption is not the same as ending. The right tools in the right hands can turn a story around. Sometimes late, he and Catherine sit in a quiet lab with the lights low and watch a hologram of a car rotate slowly, while they talk about the next 5 years. They have a plan drawn on whiteboards and paper and in their bones. More centers, more scholarships, more engineers who grew up thinking doors were closed and discovering they are just heavy. When fear visits him, and it does like weather, he tells it that the worst has already happened and that even then he learned how to build. When joy visits, and it does like sun, he does not argue with it or ask how long it plans to stay. On a weekday afternoon that smells like solder and coffee, Jenny strides into his office with a grin. "We found a way to recycle the composite offcuts into new housings," she says. Closed loop, no waste. He thinks of the small girl in the photo with oil on her fingers and realizes some promises do get kept, just not in the order you imagined. He drives out to the salvage yard at days and with a bag of tacos and sits on the tailgate of the 57 pickup while the sky goes violet. Morris joins him with 2 bottles of soda and the quiet of men who do not need to fill the air to be kind. Students drift past in pairs, arguing about redundancy and ergonomics. Someone fires an engine, and it lights cleanly on the first try. Somewhere across town, a senator's daughter pulls into her driveway and shuts off a car that used to be only a memory. Across the ocean, a museum opens its doors, and everything inside can move. Tom finishes his soda and stands, his knees making a soft complaint of metal that has worked and lasted. He pockets the bottle cap, because he has learned to keep small things that mean a day happened. He looks up at the sign, "Where dreams get fixed," and knows it isn't a slogan. It's instructions. He heads inside to lock up, hands finding switches in the dark by touch. In the training bay, the socket set in its case throws a dim reflection from a nightlight. For a moment, he sees himself the way he was the night a Mustang limped into the yard, and a girl refused to accept a smaller life. He nods to that version of himself like 2 men passing on a narrow path. Make room, keep going, and flips the last switch. The yard settles. The city breathes. Somewhere a car starts and does exactly what it's supposed to do. And in a place that once held only endings, Tom Walker steps into tomorrow with the stubborn certainty of a man who knows how to turn and tighten until a thing that felt impossible becomes the only thing that makes sense. Every dream deserves a second chance. Some just need the right hands.